Welcome back to the Daily Dope. My name is Brando. I'm the weed commando around here. Let me see here. Let me get a little smaller. Just because I was bigger for a different video. Anyway, this story did not get by me. In case you came around here because you heard of me talking about Kratom and harm reduction and the federal government squashing anybody trying to do any natural remedies. Well, while everybody was paying attention to basically everything crazy that they're trying to distract you with or that they're doing that's just over the top crazy bullshit, like passing ridiculously high additions to the military budget, or locking kids in cages and throwing their parents in jail for crossing the border, instead of pretending like there isn't pretending like south of the border hasn't been laid to waste because of America's drug habits. To pretend like that isn't the case and that these people are coming here because they just want to be dicks or something is just ridiculous. But anyway, while everybody's paying attention to everything else, Congress secretly voted and passed Sista. You know, you can't seem to get a marijuana amendment to get to the floor for any discussion or vote or anything like that. You can't get any bipartisan bills like the States Act, which simply asks for the states to get rights to do stuff that they should be allowed to do on their own without the federal government interfering. Instead of that, we get the Congress is hard at work bipartisan in a bipartisan fashion to get this shit done. And what is this shit, you might ask? It's called the Sista Act. And it ain't like the movie. This is the Sista Act that would put the sisters in jail. I mean, quite frankly, if they were pushing Jesus as a drug. I mean, this is so ridiculous. This basically, in a nutshell, you're talking about giving the Attorney General and also anybody else that wants to do it the power to just basically make anything a Schedule 1 drug. And it all, let me just read it because this is some bullshit. I want to make this video short and it ain't sweet. And as you can see, Dianne Feinstein is a Democrat from the bluest of blue states, California. You know, that liberal hellhole that the Republicans and the right-wingers always talk about, and they're trying to break into 3 states because the conservatives just hate those libtards so much. Well, here's your liberal senator right here co-sponsoring this absolute insane step in the wrong direction in the war on drugs. While people should be thinking about decriminalizing all drugs and getting rid of the fucking DEA and the Controlled Substances Act, your Democrat, Dianne Feinstein, is co-sponsoring this with Chuck Grassley, the evildoer senator that's such a piece of shit, quite frankly, for a lack of better ways to put it. He wanted to ban the CBD and hemp in the Farm Bill. Don't forget that. And he voted no on the amendment. He was the only one that voted no on adding hemp, taking hemp out of the Controlled Substances Act. He's the only one that voted no on that. Keep that in mind. Remember him. So let me see. I'm going to read this from Mike Riggs over at Reason. If you think the Department of Justice has more than enough tools to wage the war on drugs, a bill passed by the House would create a fast-track scheduling system that could lead to the criminalization of kratom, nootropics, and pretty much anything that gives you a buzz that isn't already illegal. And let's be clear, it doesn't even have to give you a buzz. They could put CBD on this thing and be, oh yeah, we're going to Schedule 1 it anyway. This is what Grassley's other way is. This might be Grassley's back door to get CBD banned still. I mean, he's really trying to get CBD banned. Who knows what Dianne Feinstein's motivation is? She's got so much money coming at her from different interests. There's no telling why she would do this. The House of Representatives voted on Friday to create a new schedule of banned drugs under the Controlled Substances Act called Schedule A, and give the Attorney General Jeff Sessions broad new powers to criminalize the manufacturing, importation, and sale of substances that are currently unregulated but not illegal. Boy, that could include a lot of shit, guys. That could include anything. Anything. You know, like back in the day, I used to be interested in absinthe. Look up absinthe if you don't know what it already is, and know that it was the only alcoholic beverage ever in the history of alcohol that was banned outright worldwide for several years, because for several decades in America, just quite frankly because it has a tetrahydra in it, wormwood, that gives you a slight psychedelic buzz, I guess. I mean, it don't really, but whatever. You know what I mean? Like, they could ban that with this. They could just be like, oh, you know what? Wormwood, Schedule 1 it, or Schedule A. That's the new one, Schedule A. All right, anyway, the bill is now headed to the Senate, where co-sponsors Dianne Feinstein and Chuck Grassley will have little problem whipping votes. Really? Don't that suck how they'll have no problem whipping up votes for this garbage that takes us back like 50 years in the drug war? But when it comes to the States Act, we're just going to table it. We're not even going to try to whip up any votes or get any support for it or get any steam rolling on it or nothing. Even though the president of the United States, first time ever that a president that is sitting in the White House right now was like, yeah, I'll sign that shit. Okay, cool. Let's go throw it in the dust bin and let it collect dust for a couple years and see what happens. So I guess they figured since the president said he would sign it, then Jeff Sessions isn't going to crack down on anything in California, even though the DEA just said that it's a Schedule 1 drug in California. We'll see how that pans out. Meanwhile, back to the article, the Stop the Importation and Trafficking of Synthetic Analogs Act. Okay, you know the government's into doing this double speak. You know they've been doing it for a while. The Patriot Act. You know, basically when they name something, it's for a reason. It's to distract you or to make you think of something else, and oh yeah, that's good then. And that's what that is. Stop the importation and trafficking of synthetic analogs. Yeah, we all hate fucking bath salts and, you know, like the K2 and the spice and all that shit. We hate it. It sucks. We want it gone. But we have learned with like 100 years of prohibition that prohibition is not how you get rid of shit like that. It's how that shit got there in the first fucking place. It's so frustrating to try to talk about this shit, because it's like some of this shit is just as obvious and plain as day. But when you see them continuing down the path that they're going, you think it's not because they haven't learned any lessons. It's because they have. They've learned that they can make money if they keep banning substances by enforcing bans. And not to mention, some of them actually are involved in making said banned substances. Don't think they're not. There ain't millions of tons of fentanyl coming in from China, guys. A lot of it's being made right here in America. And they're pissed off at things coming in from China, though. Like the analogs that are slightly not fentanyl anymore. So that's the ones you keep hearing them complain about. All right, this is Sista. It's intended to crack down on drugs that closely resemble currently banned or regulated substances in either their chemical structure or intended effects. That's important right there, because that's why Kratom is going to be in there. And they already kind of put Kratom in there by classifying it as an opioid, which doesn't make any fucking sense to anybody with a brain, because it is not an opioid. An opioid, by definition, should come from the opioid plant or be a direct analog of a chemical from the plant. Not something completely different that acts on the, the nervous system completely in a different way than opioids. Anyhow, Sista would empower the Attorney General to add drugs to this new schedule with few checks in other branches of government. Bullshit. Checks. You mean bags of money. I don't think they take checks like in that realm. Anyway, as its name implies, Sista is a response to the increased importation of fentanyl analogs. That's what they want you to think. Drugs based on the potent opioid fentanyl and that work similarly in the body but are slightly different at a formulaic level which have made their way into U.S. heroin supply and driven overdose death rates to an all-time high. And we're talking about fentanyl and carfentanil and whatever other fentanyl and hydroxy this and crazy that. Like, there's no limit. And also, like, when they see a pill on the street that's like, okay, this is just Flintstones vitamins with fentanyl in it. Basically anything, they can make it a Schedule A. I mean, they're talking about looking at the actual thing in a chemical light, so they know the exact chemical. And the whole problem before is that these manufacturers were just like, okay, we can just change the analog this and put a little different that on it and mix it with some of this. I mean, it's basically just churning every single substance into a new experiment. So that's the danger of banning something. Like, you ban something and then they make something that's just slightly different. None of that's been tested to even see what the effects are. They're just like, oh, we got to have something that's a little different. So, you know, and I'm just speaking in complete layman terms here. So if you don't understand what I'm saying, then I guess you probably won't understand why that's a big deal. So I'm just going to stop talking about it. But yeah, quite frankly, you can make anything, and as long as fentanyl is in it, it's probably bad, right? And now they're trying to figure, that's a good excuse. Everybody can get behind that. If we say that we're doing this because of this crazy fentanyl shit going on, then everybody will be okay with it. This bill marks the biggest federal effort yet to put the analog genie back in the Chinese bottle. Its Chinese bottle. For more than a decade now, legislators, regulators, law enforcement have been overwhelmed by the endless stream of analog drugs exported to the U.S. by overseas chemical manufacturers. These compounds are very similar to drugs that Congress has already banned or the prescription drugs for the FDA already regulates. Synthetic cannabinoids. There's that word again. Synthetic cannabinoids are designed to work like marijuana, cathinones, and supposed to mimic both illicit and prescription amphetamines. 2CB imbues euphoric effects similar to MDMA, and SARMs work kind of like testosterone. So you have everything from synthetic cannabinoids, which are, like they say, it's supposed to make you feel like you're stoned on weed. And then all these other things that are supposed to be like amphetamines or supposed to be like MDMA or boner pills or whatever, you know, like all this stuff is just basically like, hey, we don't like the fake versions of things that we already are making money selling. Okay. And other than that, we don't like to let people sell organic anything or anything that mimics those. The Drug Enforcement Administration has long bemoaned the fact that clandestine chemists can create these novel drugs faster than DEA can ban them. The scheduling process is complicated, and it should be when the government makes things illegal. The DEA has to identify an analog chemical structure and the schedule and or regulated drug to which it's most similar, then seek input from experts of the Department of Health and Human Services, then publish a scheduling notice in the Federal Register, and review public comments. And that, yeah, followed up by democracy can be such a drag. Sounds like the same problem that, you know, trial lawyers have to go through when it's like, oh, we got to get these witnesses and evidence and put together a good case. Can't we just shoot the guy? So yeah, oh no, I just hit a link. Sorry, guys. Prosecuting drugs that have not gone through the process of analysis and scheduling, meanwhile, requires overcoming what Sessions recently called cumbersome evidentiary hurdles, such as chemistry experts who challenge the government's claims and defendants who say they believe they were importing and selling potpourri and bath salts. Now, let's just take the one here. I don't know, you know, the people that say that's a good defense. But anyway, so they're experts who challenge the government's claims. That's what they hate, is when chemistry experts are like, hey, you guys are full of shit. This isn't what you're saying it is. They don't like those guys. That would be the people talking about Kratom. Hey, man, you guys are full of shit. This isn't really opioids. This is something that doesn't kill you. And they're like, nah, we're still calling it opioids. I don't think anything should be called an opioid unless it's got the potential to kill you with an overdose. And Kratom, you just haven't proven that, man. I don't think it can. And to prove that something can kill you from an overdose, what you really have to do is prove that it's a toxic thing and that a certain amount of it will cause death. That's what toxic means, is death, not buzz. Somehow they make you think that intoxicated is actually something you could apply to Kratom or marijuana, but you can't, because intoxicated would mean that a certain amount of that would mean you could die. And the intoxication is you teetering between sobriety and death. Think alcohol. While the Department of Justice complaints about analogs aren't nothing new, the rise of fentanyl analogs have inspired Congress to act more aggressively and clumsily than usual. The Senate version of Sista, introduced by Feinstein and Grassley, gives the Attorney General unilateral and unchecked power to add substance to Schedule A. Any substance. It contains no congressional review provision and vests no authority in the Department of Health and Human Services to challenge the DOJ's scheduling decision. When Sista came up for a vote in the House Liberty Caucus released a statement condemning the decision to cede more of Congress's legislative authority to the Attorney General and grant the AG more power to fight the war on drugs, which has eroded federalism, eviscerated numerous individual rights, entrenched severe discrimination in our criminal justice system, and failed to meaningfully limit the proliferation of illicit drugs. I mean, come on, guys. You've been fighting marijuana harder than any other drug, and somehow it's legal in most states in some fashion. Good job, guys. Bang up job. And also, when it comes to illicit drugs that are actually killing people, you haven't done anything on that front. I mean, all of them are more potent, more accessible, more available in more areas all the time, and it's just getting worse. Starting to wonder, what the hell you guys even are doing at all. Thanks to the advocacy of Representative Justin Amish, Republican from Michigan, and I like you, Justin. I don't know if you're hearing me right now, but you've been a pretty good voice overall for freedom and liberty, and I commend you for that. And as you may know by watching my videos, I am not a party person. I don't give a shit if you're a Republican or a Democrat. I'm not a fucking Republican, and I'm not a fucking Democrat. I don't give a shit about the two-party system. I think the two-party system is the dictatorship. If you think that we don't have any choices but the two-party system, you are what they call like locked into a paradigm, and there's no way we can snap you out of it. So we're not going to do anything but commend people that do good things and condemn people for being shitty, like Dianne Feinstein and Chuck Grassley. You are shit people, guys, and this is ridiculous. But anyway, him and many others, provisions were added to the House version of Sista that appears to constrain the Attorney General, though they probably won't. That's, thanks for trying, is all I got to say there. Even with the sponsor's amendment, says the Liberty Caucus statement, the bill allows the AG to schedule substances permanently without significant input or involvement by the Department of Health and Services. More specifically, the Senate bill requires the Attorney General only to notify HHS of scheduling decision and, quote, take into consideration any comments submitted to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. The amended House bill requires that if the Secretary of HHS has determined based on relevant scientific studies and necessary data requested by the Secretary and gathered by the Attorney General that a drug or other substances has been temporarily placed in Schedule A, does not have sufficient potential for abuse or warrant control in any schedule, and so advises the Attorney General in writing, the Attorney General may not issue a permanent scheduling order and shall, within 30 days of receiving the Secretary's advance, issue an order immediately terminating the temporary scheduling order. Sounds like a pretty good protection, don't it? The House bill also gives Congress 180 days to write and pass legislation reversing a temporary scheduling order, but says nothing about reversing a permanent scheduling order. Why the House would tie its own hands in a matter like this is mystifying. I don't get it, man. I don't understand why you want to give these crooked police agencies like ICE, the DEA, the FBI. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and say the CEA too, or I mean the CIA. These are people that are, I mean, first of all, they should be able to come up with their own budget by the shady shit that they're all doing. But second of all, I mean, what are they really doing, man? I don't understand it. I don't understand what they're really doing. It's not constitutional, I'm pretty sure. But whatever, man. Why would the Congress keep giving these bureaucracies that are authoritarian in nature, police state, like gangs? Why are you guys giving them more power and you less power? I don't understand that. The bigger issue here is that, and this is the Health and Human Services that is basically passing off their power. They got a little bit of power. Well, you know what? We've looked at it and CBD isn't dangerous, so we're not going to let you do this. And that's just all they can do. They can just say that. The Attorney General can fight them, and he'll probably win. So the bigger issue here is that the data HHS needs in order to make a recommendation will come from the DOJ, which is not exactly an unbiased source. And by the way, what scientific data are you really going to look for in something that's already, you know, like this is something that doesn't have any scientific data by definition. They're like, oh yeah, we can ban stuff that doesn't have any scientific data backing it up or saying that it's safe or dangerous. We're just going to be like, oh, this gets you, this does this. Oh, we don't like it. Ban it. You know, there's no scientific relevant, especially relevant. That word relevant is important there. Relevant scientific studies. So the Secretary of HHS, unless they really are pissed because it's something that they like, they're not going to fucking make any moves against the AG. And if an AG wants a drug to remain in Schedule A, the data the DOJ shares with HHS will likely support that preference. Duh. Just as the data DOJ prosecutors share with jurors supports their preference for conviction. What's more, there's almost no random control trial data for drugs that are not already well into the FDA pipeline. To get that data, researchers would not only have to raise money outside the pharmaceutical system, and you can ask the multiple disciplinary studies for psychedelics, MAPS, those guys, it's hard. They'll tell you. They also have to get the AG's permission to manufacture or study any substance that has been scheduled using emergency powers. And as one might expect, SISTA gives the AG wide latitude in determining what drugs are permissible to manufacture and study. So, like I just said before, is like there's no way you're going to get those scientific relevant studies on anything that's just some new thing that comes out of the blue, especially those the ones that they really want to focus on, obviously, like any kind of bath salts or any of that shit. There's not going to be any relevant studies saying that those are safe and that they shouldn't be banned. Huh? So this only applies to things like Kratom, where there hasn't been the allowance of the studies. There's people can't seem to get the money together to do these studies, and the people that do these studies are getting discounted as being politically motivated in time in other cases and situations. So we have yet to see how this is going to play out. So the Liberty Caucus statement suggests HHS oversight provision in the House bill is toothless and absent entirely from the Senate version. Oops. So it's just, I don't know. In addition to creating a new class of controlled substances, both bills give the Justice Department unprecedented power to criminalize compounds that aren't regulated by the FDA or already controlled substance. Here's a brief rundown of the provision common in both versions of SISTA. And now when we say that you have these two different versions, what ends up happening is we got the one that passed, and then the other house will do what they can, pass theirs. You know, they'll look at the House one and the differences, and they'll be like, okay, let's try to take some of these differences and make them more the same. And then after that happens, now you have them looking at it. If the Senate version passes and the House don't like it, they can always say, well, hey, we want to argue a little bit more about this point here or that point there. It's not happening. What all they're doing is piling on. All right, that's it. So this is what Sista has in common in both houses. Allow the Attorney General to use emergency scheduling powers to place a substance in Schedule A for up to 5 years, whereas current emergency scheduling powers only allow for a maximum length of ban for 2 years. The additional length of time matters because temporary scheduling is not subject to judicial review. The bill's criteria for inclusion in Class A of Controlled Substances Act is incredibly broad. It includes any substance that is not already scheduled and is chemically similar to any in drug classes 1 through 4. Schedule 1 drugs are illegal save for the research that must be approved and supervised by the DEA. Drugs in remaining schedules can be prescribed. Has an actual or predicted stimulant, depressant, or hallucinogenic effect similar to that of any drug in classes 1 through 4. Now that was the one I'm thinking where they can get Kratom, because it has a stimulant, depressant effect that is similar to a drug in the scheduling, but they've already made a statement in the FDA that they consider Kratom opioid. So the DEA has said that, and that's where they're heading with this. You know, as soon as they apply this to Kratom, that's where they're going with it, right there. If a drug fits the above criteria, an Attorney General believes that scheduling it under the CSA will assist in preventing abuse or misuse of the drug or other substances, the AG has met all the criteria necessary to schedule the drug. We're talking about Kratom again. I'm going to keep mentioning Kratom throughout the end of this video because that's basically the main one I'm focused on. Now, this can apply to just about anything. Like I keep saying, absinthe, they could say, oh, wormwood, it's out. They could do this to any substance. So as long as it has some kind of effect that's like something else. Wormwood in that case, they would be like, oh, it's just like weed. It's a tetrahydra and it's like weed. So you're out. Sista establishes a statutory maximum of 10 years in prison for a Schedule A offender with no prior drug convictions. Wow. So we're rewinding the drug war big time and putting an exclamation point on dumb. Because this is exactly how more substances get created more rapidly. And I just don't understand how they think this is a good idea. 15 years of ingestion of a substance results in serious bodily injury or death. Those maximum rise to 20 and 30 if the offender has a prior felony drug conviction. So what did we learn about basketball sentences in the drug war? They don't do anything either. None of this is a deterrent. None of this is going to stop anybody from doing any drugs. None of this is going to stop anybody from doing anything that's going on before this. So if this passes and gets signed into law, it's actually not going to do anything except for make the drug war really crazy, really fast, rapidly. Importers of, and this is like a desperate move that you think, wow, they're losing marijuana, now what? They just want to call anything they want a banned substance and go after it. You know, they don't want to do no 80 plus year played out thing like marijuana. They want to just be like, oh, bath salts, let's go. You know, round up the troops, and it's going to be hell out there. It's going to be a lot of shit going down. Let's just say that. And I mean, if they apply this to Kratom, it's going to be sad because that's only going to exacerbate their opioid epidemic like everything else that they've done. And I'm going to do a video pretty soon updating what they've done and what it's doing, because it's pretty obvious that everything that the federal government has done since they have acknowledged that we have a serious opioid problem in this country has done nothing but make it worse, and is making it worse by the day. And this right here is going to totally just open the floodgates of problems with the opioid epidemic. Importers of a Class A drug will face statutory maximums of 20 years, 30 years if they have a prior felony drug conviction, and a maximum of life in prison if consumption of the drug they imported results in serious bodily injury or death. Life in prison for basically manslaughter. Despite the use of synthetic analog in a bill title, the criteria for inclusion in Schedule A says only a drug or substance. So again, it could just be anything. Fans of the herbal opioid remedy known as Kratom have expressed concerns about Sista, as have nootropic users and research chemical enthusiasts. The combined vagueness and broadness of this bill should worry all of them. While the immediate justification of the bill is fentanyl, the legislation is so much broader than that. Where coffee and booze not historically entrenched in our culture, this bill would absolutely allow the DOJ to add both caffeine as a stimulant and alcohol as a sedative to Schedule A of the Controlled Substances Act. You know, and maybe they'll say something like guarana or one of those other, like the ginseng type herbs that give you a little bit of an uplift. Maybe they don't like the competition that their synthetic caffeine has, or their regular caffeine for that matter. The race to develop drugs that briefly exist in a legal gray area, not scheduled at the formulaic level, but similar to things that are, is a genuine problem. The cat and mouse game between the DOJ and clandestine chemists has led to a downward spiral in quality, safety, and predictability. Batches of spice and K2 that flooded drugstores and head shops in the early 2000s, for example, could be hit or miss, but a synthetic cannabinoids, as they are floating around the U.S. now that those early versions are illegal, has caused mass hospitalizations. Yeah, because basically all you got to do is add rat poison to it, apparently, and it's a different chemical, and you can sell that. More potent and deadly than any drug we've seen before, fentanyl analogs are easy to make, cheap to buy, discreetly packaged, and different to detect at U.S. ports of entry. While the libertarian response to this phenomenon would be to make safer opioids available to people who want them in conjunction with lifting federal regulations on medications like methadone, naloxone, and buprenorphine, Congress very seldom does the libertarian thing. I mean, they never do when it comes to the drug war. Come on, let's be real. And they definitely never will when it comes to their libertarian free market economy type, you know, laissez-faire shit. Don't expect that to ever happen. I don't care if libertarians were like majority of the Republican Party. It wouldn't happen. What will the illicit chemical manufacturers do if Sista passes? What will they do? Will they stop exporting to the U.S.? Will they change their packaging and labeling strategies? What will the new race to the bottom of the chemical barrel look like? These are the questions Congress should be thinking about now. After all, legislators wrote this bill as a response to the crisis they helped create when they encouraged law enforcement and regulators to crack down on prescription pills without considering users might substitute heroin and fentanyl. Several years ago, Britain passed a similar law banning what Sista calls Schedule A drugs. The Royal Pharmaceutical Society's Pharmaceutical Journal reported last year that many users of what were once called legal highs in the UK have since switched to more historically illegal drugs. The substitution effect shouldn't surprise anyone. It explains why people who once crushed pills now shoot fentanyl. And we should expect to see it here if Congress empowers Sessions to add whatever drugs he wants to the Controlled Substances Act. And yeah, man, that's it. That's all I got on Sista. I hope I didn't bore you with this crap, but this is some serious shit. And like all serious shit, it's steeped with just overt corruption and, you know, total disdain for American citizens and treating the drug war completely the opposite of the history lesson that we've just witnessed of this drug war, totally destroying everything. The drug war is completely ridiculous, guys, but it is such a corrupt cesspool of shit that, you know, there's no way we're gonna ever get out of it. It don't seem like. Just when everybody from the top to the bottom of the government and the press has admitted in the last 5 to 10 years that the drug war is an adjunct failure. Trillions of dollars wasted, millions of people jailed, lives ruined because of records, countless amounts of police abuses and corruption and misuse of authority, murder, you name it, gangs, all this shit because of the drug war. And yet they think this is the direction we should go. All right, I'm out of here, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Peace out. Oh, yeah, and one more thing. In case you haven't noticed me on social media or whatever, I do have some people that I am, when it comes to Kratom, my go-to people are these people here, and that would be Drew Turner. And if you're watching this, thank you for tuning in, Drew. I tune in as much as I can to whenever you're dropping stuff. He's a pretty big advocate for Kratom. He's one of the biggest Kratom advocates I know of. And then you have Joshua Orr, otherwise known as Carpo, who updates from time to time on Kratom news and information. And yeah, man, he's got a lot of good insights on life in general, but that's where I've been following my Kratom information from, and that's when I've been, I did a report about Sista way back in 2016, I think. And when I did, it was really just some kind of side story. I wasn't really too concerned about it. But now that it has passed, in its house form has passed, it's kind of a little bit nerve-wracking, to be honest. And I found out about this most recent update because of a tweet I seen from Drew Turner. Thanks again. And that's all I got, guys. Have a good one. And Dianne Feinstein, not your friend. All right, peace.